Mike McCool here in the Royal Examiner studio, and with me today I have John Stanmeyer. John is running for the Republican nomination for the Shenandoah District for Warren County Board of Supervisors.
Correct.
And that will be a firehouse, a primary. I guess it's a primary, isn't it, John?
Yeah.
And it's on May 5th from 2 to 7 at the North Warren Fire Hall. So be sure to be John, and I think Ralph Rinaldi are the two candidates. So one thing before we start this little conversation, just remind people that anyone that lives in Shenandoah District can vote. It's not just for Republicans or Democrats or independents. So it's basically for anyone that lives in that district can vote in this primary. So I want you to introduce you to John, because John is a newcomer to the political spectrum here in Warren County. So John, I ask everyone, is why in the world do you want to do this?
Good question. I'm relatively new to the area. I've lived here for 6 years, and we were drawn here by the quality of life and the small town character, the family-friendly character, and of course the beautiful scenic skyline in Shenandoah area. And after we moved here, I started to pay attention to local politics, and some good things have happened, but also, the EDA blew up when I was here, and there's been issues, people in an uproar about real estate assessment increases and other issues. And I've been starting to look at the budget, particularly the one that was released about a year ago for the fiscal year now ending, and saw in there some things that gave me a little concern. And I figured that I have the skills to take a data-driven management approach and sort of look through the details and really try to bring good, honest governance to the county. And I'm not saying that that's not the case now. I think we've had a lot of good personnel changes and that the current board has been doing a good job. But I do bring a corporate skill set to the picture, which I've been working in data all my life. So I'm used to going through the numbers, finding the discrepancies, getting into the details, and seeing where things don't add up or don't make sense, and then going from there. So I'd like to be able to bring that type of a skill set and help drive us towards responsible governance and being good stewards of the taxpayers' money, trying to hold the line as much as we can on tax increases, make sure that we're spending the money wisely and in the right places, and really also listen to the people and represent the people who have voted for me, and then represent the people of the entire county.
Right. So. Of course, this, like I said, you represent everyone, not just a select few. Yeah.
And I like that. If you look at the org chart in the budget document, it starts with the people on top, and then the Board of Supervisors, and it goes down from there. So we report to the people, and we are, we are stewards for the people.
So. Give me a little bit of background information. You said you're doing the things that no one likes to do. No one likes to look at numbers and sit there and read charts and graphs. And
my wife laughs at me. I've got charts and numbers on everything. And I track everything.
I bet that went over well.
Yeah,
it's great. So, what kind of work have you done in the past? Are you
Sure. I've always been in sort of an economics and analysis area. And I went to UVA, graduated in economics there. And my first job out of the gate was where I had interned at Price Waterhouse, which is accounting and consulting, and dealt with government contracts there and with negotiation. Moved on from there to the telecom industry, then into international trade, and dealt with the regulation around dumping, which not environmental dumping, but selling below cost in a foreign market. And really got into data with specific companies there. And then moved to where I am now, which is in the aviation space. And I work for a brand name within LexisNexis, and we work with airlines in the airports and provide the data and consulting for your air travel to be safe, on time, at the right cost, and when and where you need it.
Exactly.
So that's I'd kind of like to bring that same sort of ethos to the county, and what we need when we need at the right price and done properly.
Right, because it's all about the future.
Yeah.
It's all about the future.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're so hung up on the stuff we're doing today.
Well, yeah.
We don't realize the cost and what it really does cost. You hear about that in the government. Well, we passed this bill. It sounds really good, but guess what? Over the next 10 years, it's going to cost us 10 times as much.
Well, exactly. And again, in the budget document, it had. For example, debt service on bonds and notes, and if you look for the next several years, it's relatively constant, like $12 million a year,
right,
until 2030, and all of a sudden it goes to $54 million.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, that's
What
a time,
happened there?
yeah, that's a time bomb, right? So I want to dig into that.
Yeah.
What is driving that? Is there anything that can be avoided, or otherwise, how do we prepare for that and set aside money for that, so that when that debt service balloons like that, we're not having to cut critical services or raise taxes suddenly and precipitously.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's all about the planning. It's about the future and having a plan, because that's the problem. Sometimes you ask people, "Do you have a plan?"
Yes.
Well, we'll worry about that when it happens.
Right.
Well, you mentioned that when I first moved here to Virginia, back in the 70s, they were building the freeway around Washington. 495. Of course, Maryland had 4 or 5 lanes going across. Virginia had 2.
Yeah.
And my question back then was, why didn't you build it now we're tearing down bridges? We'll deal with that when we need it.
Right.
And that's always seems to be the problem. The government's just we'll deal with it later.
Yeah. And like everything, you can plan right and for the long term, or you can sort of plan as you go and always just be looking 1 year ahead. And with everything, that can cause problems. Like if you need a road, and you can afford tar and chip, but if you look at the long run, the true asphalt is going to last longer and be lower cost per year in the long run.
Right, exactly.
With higher outlay initially.
Or right now we might build 2 lanes, but we better buy right away for 6 lanes.
Yes, yeah.
And when we build the bridge, let's just build it once and make it wide enough so if we add more lanes, we can go in there.
Yeah.
You see that a lot, or tearing down stuff because we didn't think we'd really need that.
Yeah.
Of course, you can overplan, but it's better to plan than not.
Yeah, for sure. And like, for example, on the transportation plan going all the way back to the 70s for 66, there's a potential interchange with Shenandoah Shores Road, which seems like it will never happen. And now, particularly because that's a dead end by the river in one direction, there's not a real impetus to do that. But it goes to an issue that I'm working on, which is the safety situation in Shenandoah Shores. I mean, I live up there in that direction.
When the railroad goes across a couple of places.
Yeah.
We have that out in Rockland too, you know. And the railroad, that's kind of Warren County. We talk about all the great things we have, but we're also divided by two an interstate, divided by river, and divided by railroad. So it kind of puts a
it does. I mean, we've got farms that were bisected by 66, and they're still operating on both sides. But what a headache that is, Another example that's coming up, the rail trail, assuming it does go through, and of course it's still very much an idea, as opposed to something that's been fully approved and funded. But the rail trail, as you go south into the other counties, will bisect some farms. And currently the right-of-way is there from the railroad, but the farmers are not keen on it being, that right-of-way being handed over for recreational purposes, and people potentially wandering and picking whatever fruit or whatever. So there are issues, to get that done, it's going to require the right sort of negotiation and accommodations and assurances to people. But there's tremendous tourism potential for the area by having that. So things like that I'd like to help move forward.
Right.
And sort of bring that in, although the town and the county have separate remits and separate authorities, and some of this deals on town land. But try to bring the right cooperative approach to sort of optimize for both sides the big picture, because really we're all in this together, the town and the county. And tourism being our number one revenue source commercially is something that we haven't fully leveraged and need to be focused on.
You mentioned the town and the county, so always I've asked Board of Supervisor candidates, what do you think about the town and county cooperation?
Okay. I will say 2 things. I think everyone is trying. And I believe everyone has best intent, but I also think we're not always singing on the same sheet of music, and we're missing opportunities, even with the DMO, the Discover Front Royal, being sort of inadvertently shut down, and that cooperation agreement being dissolved, and it looks like that will come back. We'll come back together on that. But on everything, including public safety, tourism, some infrastructure things, and roads, and schools, the town and the county need to work together. These are important issues. We have separate budgets, but there's some overlap, and oftentimes they're complementary. We're not necessarily, providing duplicate services.
Right. We did get out of that years ago. We used to provide a lot of duplicate services.
Yeah.
I think people forget that the town and the county are all part of the county. I mean, it's one thing, and the town is, they always say, they keep accusing us. People don't understand how the taxes work, I don't think. Oh, you're double taxed, but we're really, we're not. You're only paying for services that you get into town, and of course the county covers it, all of it.
Absolutely.
So it's a tough thing, and to express that to people sometimes is a difficult
for
thing
sure,
to do.
For sure, and it's not that people don't comprehend it. People are very busy. I think there are so many.
When you get two tax bills, you're getting double charged.
Exactly. Speaking of tax bills, the assessments thing, that was a cause for a lot of uproar, and it looks like they're honing in on a 49-cent rate, which would basically be revenue neutral, even 40,000 lower. So hopefully that issue goes away. But I had concerns with how that was all handled. And first of all, the assessments go out, and people assume it's a tax bill, and it's not a tax bill. But if your assessment goes up 35 or 40%, it's not unreasonable to think you're going to have a 40% tax hike. And who can afford that out of the blue? So I think going forward, there are things that can be done better about that. Like the reassessment was contracted out, but it was conducted over a multi-year time period. And by the time those numbers were all together, interest rates had just shot up from 3.25% to 6.5% or 7%, which cuts like a third into affordability on any given home.
Exactly.
So to me, those assessments should have been dead on arrival, because now we're stuck with assessments that are unrealistically high, and so we're setting a tax rate to compensate that is unrealistically low. And if we had done the assessment a little bit more effectively and efficiently and contemporaneously with present economics, and then also, if we had not had flat assessments for like 3 or 4 years in a row, because then you are kind of building up. I mean, sometimes at some point you're going to have to catch up, right?
Exactly.
So there are ways to do this better.
Of course, now the market is going down, so it's
it just came out today. I think that Virginia showed a decline in this average selling price for the first time in years. You know, so the market. There are challenges in the market right now for real estate. People who have good loans and 3% loans, they don't want to trade up to a 6 or 7% loan. So
you want that. You want to. Of course, I bought a house in the last thing back in whenever it was, the 80s or so, and the person I bought it from had a 16.5% loan. I got a 9.5%, and I thought that was great.
When my first home, our second trust was 9 point something.
And that's good. I always say, if it's under 10%, you can live with it.
Anything above that is usually, but I agree.
Just live within your means.
Exactly.
We have a tendency to buy a lot more house than we need, so that's always something.
It's just when things change so fast like that, it really distorts economics, and it locks people into decisions that they don't necessarily mean to be stuck with. So
let's talk a little bit about that interchange real quick, because that's been on the drawing board for 30 years. I think this is my personal opinion on it. It may have to move down to Dismal Hollow because of this dead end and college and the people, there's a lot of political things. But, it's like the road, and I've used the example many times in Winchester's built, Jubal Early Drive, and they built this crossover road, and just look at how that opened up that land. And it's like the same thing if we build our crossover road from 8th Street out and we to an interchange across people's farms that don't want to sell, but just think what that would do to that part of the county, which would be in your district. So that would be a big thing. But the railroad is, that will help on some of the railroad situations there. Still got to cross it. So, what do you feel about that and the railroad itself? People are basically caught by that railroad.
Yeah, no, it's a safety issue, and we've got couple thousand people back there when you add in the 500 or 600 homes and the college and the schools and the industrial
and maybe
park.
some more homes going up there at the...
Oh, let's talk about that next.
Okay.
So it's a real safety issue to have trains stopping and blocking that. I mean, and to make matters worse, we had stunts like disruptors, basically for political points, deliberately stopped a train there for several hours last summer. And, a guy couldn't get to his surgery, all kinds of things. So it's a real, it's unlikely, but it is a legitimate health and welfare issue.
Maybe we put a ferry across the river.
There's a guy who did row across one time at a train blockage to get to like his confirmation or something that. So, so it's an issue. I don't think a 66 interchange is realistic, and we shouldn't put any eggs in that basket. I also, the Leech Run flyover, despite it being part of the vision for Leech Run as phase 2, and despite Ryan Holmes making an amendment to their proposed footprint to accommodate that, the money will be hard to come by for that. A flyover is very expensive. It's a lot of infrastructure. But I'm not saying it's off the table, but it's unlikely. So there's a couple other ways in and out. Most of them involve, or all of them involve, negotiating with private property owners. And I'm not keen on eminent domain. I was not happy with the Supreme Court New London, Connecticut decision, but I do support people's property rights and the rights of farmers to keep their land. But there is one way, sort of across from the railroad union, there is a potential way to come around to Dismal Hollow, and it wouldn't be an interchange with 66, but it would be another way in and out of that neighborhood.
Get you down there to that low water bridge and...
and actually it would get you down there right across where Dismal Hollow T intersects with Morgan / Happy Creek. That's one way. You've got to negotiate with the farmer, the same farmer whose farm was bisected by a 66, and he's still not happy about that. No. So another way is back in Shenandoah Shores, you've got a property that comes out across from Houseville. Potential, but you've got to negotiate, and I think that's not going to happen. The best way that I think of is to kind of near Progress Drive, there was supposed to be a collector road that would come out near 8th Street, and that was actually proffered by developers, and I don't know if it expired, but it's sort of like evaporated.
It's evaporated. It's been gone.
Yeah.
It's like anything. What the original road is supposed to be this big. Now we want to make it this big, and we don't want that. We want this. So they go back and forth. But the time will come that that's going to be our Jubal Early Drive. I think when that goes, because there's 1,500 lots in there that have already got water and sewer allocated for them.
And so there's a lot of growth potential there.
Right. So let's talk about this other subdivision that's right across the railroad track. It's in town.
And I think everybody knows whose property it is. I don't want to bemoan anybody in particular, but he's doing what he wants to do for his best personal economic interests, and I understand that. But what I don't really want is 120 or 130 homes going into that landlocked neighborhood without another way in and out. So by right, he can do 30 something. Right. And if that's what he decides to do, that's fine. I don't know if Ryan will take a fish that small, Ryan Holmes. I'd rather have new development go to our local construction firms rather than having the big nationals swoop in, do their cookie cutters, and then out the door. Let's create local construction jobs for our local construction companies that will reinvest in the community, keep the profits local, and create longer term jobs and not hire just temporary labor. So, but as for that property, first of all, we need more single-family homes. We need more affordable housing. We're growing rapidly. We only added, first of all, in like 2020 and 2021, we added 150 or 200 homes each year, which was, I think, 200 or more, which is 50 above the norm. So ever since COVID, because of telecommuting and just because the relative freedom that we enjoyed here compared to the big cities, people are moving here, and people are settling here. We need to have more housing. So I'm not against housing. I'm not against development, but I want to do it smart. I want to make sure that we're putting in the infrastructure and not just taking inadequate proffers that give us a short-term bump, and then we can't build the schools or we can't build the roads or we don't have the safe ingress and egress from a new neighborhood. So that's where I stand on that Ryan Homes development. If they want to do 30-something on homes by right, go for it. If you want 120 or 130, that will increase the overall populace around there by about 25%. And we already have this landlocked situation with rail crossing delays that are 10, 15 minutes sometimes. And if they do a political stunt, who knows? Yeah.
It's a couple days.
Yeah. So at that point, I would say do not rezone.
Right.
So I showed up at the hearing and spoke against it. So did, I'd say, 9 out of 10 speakers were against it. Don't rezone. And that's where I just stand is we have our current zoning for a reason. A lot of things are pretty well, I mean, despite what you see around you, a lot of things are pretty well thought out. Sure. So we shouldn't just go topsy-turvy, just overturning zoning without trying to get into the heads of why was it zoned this way in the first place. And there's a reason to preserve our small town look and feel as well. We don't want to line everything up with tons of cookie cutter apartments and data centers, and all of a sudden we're Centerville or we're Ashburn 2.0.
Right.
And not that those are bad communities, but there's a reason people from there come here.
Exactly.
They come here for a view, for a Skyline Drive, for the hiking, for the agritourism, and so forth. And then suddenly, if you're on Compton East looking over and you see Ashburn 2.0, it no longer has that appeal.
Exactly.
And we have 1.2 million visitors to Skyline Drive every year. Front Royal is by far the most busy and active gateway to Skyline Drive and to the Shenandoah. They're coming from all over the world. You go up there, you'll hear people speaking German and Japanese.
Sure, yeah.
And
well, yesterday I was getting ice cream downtown, and there's some people. It was like 5:30 or so everything was closed. And they were looking at the kiosk. I walked across the street, and they were from Connecticut, and they're going to go up on the drive, and they're looking for stuff to do. What's going on here? We looked at the map. People are all over. Like you say, they come here for that, and we need to grab hold of that and do something good with it.
And there have been some good ideas on that. Like the comprehensive plan that came out in November has good ideas about that. There was a separate study that was done, and they had some good marketing concepts like the base camp, where Front Royal is your base camp to do all these recreational and agri-recreation opportunities. So we have a good main street that's being revitalized and has some very family-friendly stuff. We need to get some of those 1.2 million people coming into town.
Well, one year I we put the big signs up, hurry up, get through town, turn left, get up on the drive. I went down there and stuck some yard signs up that says, "Oh, tired of waiting in line? Turn right and visit downtown Front Royal."
That's
true. That idea.
And that's another thing is like it does become a burden on the locals here when you've got all those people on 55 between between Linden and here. So something to fix that, or to get some of them to come into exit 6 and come the other way. But then you don't want them driving through this blighted area, because that's a big turnoff. So all the blighted and distressed properties, I would like to.
They all seem to be on the entrance corridor, don't they?
Well, that's true. It's at all. It's at 522 and 340 and 6th Street and 55, and right where you don't want it. First of all, some of them are not vacant, and so anything I say here, I'm speaking to vacant properties. But for a vacant property, I'd like to incentivize, or maybe disincentivize, depending if it's a carrot or a stick. But those property owners to either turn those properties over, or rehabilitate them, or sell them to someone who will. And maybe you have to put incentives to the buyers of said properties. I'm not sure.
I always try to convince people, if the lot is empty, it's more valuable if it. But they don't do that because zoning doesn't allow them to build something. There's a building around here. They just left one wall standing to kind of like beat around the zoning issues. We need to be a little more flexible in that. If we want to do it, you're going to have to let people, just tear it down and be done with it.
Exactly. Now, just to be clear, a lot of that is a town issue, but there are ways that the town and the county can coordinate and cooperate on this, and especially
There's a lot of
if
places
we have
in the counties too. I mean, talking about Shenandoah Farms and Shenandoah Shores and all these subdivisions that people came in here with recreational on their mind and then turned around and never came back.
I mean, you've got that's true. In the farms, there are some abandoned motorhomes and campers right along the riverside.
It's hard to go and clean up stuff.
That's an issue in the shores right now too, because you have one lot where a gentleman bought the lot with the belief and the good intent to do some camping there.
Sure.
And he's gotten some resistance from the HOA of Shenandoah Shores, and
Sure.
and they have good points, and they don't want to open the door to some of that, blighted, rundown RV type stuff.
Sure,
So,
sure.
but in a case like that, I would support the HOA has the right to enforce their own covenants. And if they want to change those covenants, then they can have the members of the HOA have a referendum on that.
Sure,
just
sure.
the normal way.
Right. Well, real quick, we know about building these homes. We know it. Of course, the cost of building a home from the government standpoint never really recoups through taxes.
No.
We really need corporate business
Yes.
jobs
Yeah.
to help. It's kind of like a catch-22.
Yeah.
You need one without the other. You can't get one unless you have this.
Yeah.
So what about business? A lot of our business has gone out the corridor.
Yeah.
And that seems the direction that, larger jobs are going that direction. So, with all this EDA stuff, what's your take on, how the EDA can work? We've kind of stuck it underneath the county government now.
Yeah.
And,
Well, first of all, a couple things about the EDA first. And what a good mini-series that would make. But I'm optimistic about the direction of the EDA currently, the reformed EDA, like Scott Jenkins, some of the new appointees. I think they are going to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, meaning that they can work on the cleanup and trying to recoup some funds and solve some of the mysteries and fix some of what's broken, while at the same time being proactively and mostly worried about the future and new development and bringing in companies. So they are working with the state on that. They are working with several companies, and we've gotten some good ones recently. Some, for example, manufacturing and food have been some that have come in. And one that I'm personally excited about because of my aviation link is Silent Falcon at the airport. So they came in for two reasons. A, the airport was a great place for them to do work with their drones and development on their drones. And secondly, because RMA has a drone program. So we have these neat features that can be leveraged to bring in companies. I think we could leverage the fact that this is a small town with charm and it's a beautiful outdoor area to bring in teleworkers, for example. Yes, I want to bring in companies, but I also want to make it friendly for people who work at big companies in the city.
Sure.
They were working from home during COVID.
We're bringing their mind power out here.
Yeah. Bring the brain power out here, and some of them will go on to start small businesses too.
Exactly.
But they were working from home during COVID. Most of them now have the option to work from home or not. But I'll tell you, because I do this personally, from working from home for years, it gets old after a while.
It does get old.
You kind of want a peer group. You kind of want a place to go and sort of keep your home life and your work life a little bit more separate. We've got a couple places in town where people can telework, and of course they can set up camp in the coffee shop, but you can't do a good meeting that way within a privacy. So just, get like a teleworking place here. That would be a nice thing to do, I think, and it would get filled up pretty quick because the businesses that are doing this on the side, they have waiting lists,
Right.
So that's one thing. Again, tourism, I think, is going to be a big driver for us. And then for other jobs, we have our industrial areas, and we have not maxed it out yet. So we need to work on driving new companies to those areas. One of the things that has come up recently was data centers, and I've been in dozens of data centers through my work. I've helped small companies grow, and suddenly they could no longer operate out of an office. They had to get into a data center. So I know a lot about them, in Warrenton, there's big controversy about Amazon putting in a data center in Warrenton. So that's one thing where I'm cautious about. And when this by right zoning change came up for data centers, I was not in favor of that. I think by right is dangerous because it gives too much control to an outside entity to come in and steamroll you and figure out the loopholes. And Amazon, for example, they don't see us as their people. They see us as flyover.
We're not a charming community.
Yeah. We're flyover country where there's cheap real estate. But put in a large, noisy, tall data center that's just a big shoebox and put that in our view shed, you have to be very careful about how big and where. And ideally keep it kind of in that industrial area and out of sight. So I'm sort of against by right on that.
Kind of like our power plant.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. The other thing is we've had a bad taste with data centers and the Tran thing with the visas and all that. That was, but that was a one-off. Just from being in data centers, I can tell you that if they promise lots of jobs, that's usually not true.
Right.
They usually run a data center once it's been built. I mean, there's jobs temporarily to build it, but once it's there, you've usually got a skeleton crew that's like on call to fix stuff, kind of like your Geek Squad.
Sure.
They work for all the companies that have servers in there.
And then they not even live in our community.
Yeah, and then the guy who's actually doing stuff on those servers, and he's doing it all remotely. He could be anywhere in the world.
Right.
Yeah. So a data center is not a huge long-term job creator in terms of like a warehouse would have a lot more people working in that warehouse and moving stuff around and distributing goods than a data center would.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've been thinking about this stuff for a long time.
Yeah. I've always been interested in real estate and politics and economics, and there's a convergence to that right here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like, people have a choice. We have two candidates running, and I think both would do a great job. I really appreciate newcomers coming into our community, and again, that was a choice. You could have moved anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, we came here. We moved from Loudon. Loudon was kind of on the line of scrimmage for social issues, and that wasn't exactly my bread and butter. So we came here to get a little bit more traditional too, and. Frankly, the schools here have gotten a little bit more off in that woke direction, and the Board of Supervisors doesn't oversee that directly. The school board does, but that's one area where I think there's a distinction between myself and my opponent.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we have some great things that people need to think about.
Yeah.
John has an email address. If you have questions about that, we'll put the email address here below the video. Shoot him a line. He'll be glad to talk to you, and we'll set that up. I want to remind everyone, if you live in the Shenandoah District, there's a firehouse primary on May the 5th at the North Warren Fire Hall from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. If you live in that district, you can vote there. You don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat, or you can be an independent. Doesn't matter. So you just have to live in the district. And we want to encourage everyone to please get out and vote.
Yeah.
They're making it as convenient as they can. The district's not that big, but we need every vote. Every vote counts.
Yeah, and just as a public service announcement, I would say there's a second primary at that same date and time and location, which is for Virginia House of Delegates, District 31.
That's right.
Yeah, so that is, gosh, I can't remember both of the candidates' names, so I'm not going to say them. But regardless of where in Front Royal you live, you can vote in that other race.
Right.
But only the people in the Shenandoah
We'll
District
get that ballot.
can vote in my
so
race.
if all of a sudden you see a ballot that's not on there, that's why. Well, John, again, appreciate everything coming in. It's nice meeting you. And if you're successful in the primary, we hope you come back and talk to us for you'll be in the general.
Excellent. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks
Appreciate
again.
it.